Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best 15 brawlers for 2024. So there's been some really broken brawlers in 2024. A lot of the new brawlers have broken the meta as well. So taking a look at mainly what brawlers have been good consistently throughout the year. But of course, there's been some other instances, you know, for example, like a Lily rework, which completely broke the meta, which we'll take a look at as well. So of course, we're going to be starting off at number 15, and that's going to be Piper. So it might be a surprise to some people, but I think Piper has been so consistent this year. So Piper received some damage buffs in 2023, which then over time really made her good in 2024. And I would say she's consistently A to S tier at the beginning of 2024 because it was a big sniper meta. We had Angelo, Nanny, Bell, etc., where the map pool really helped them out too, so super sniper friendly. And Piper received some nerfs on the 25th of March, which decreased her HP by a little bit. She then got a damage nerf at minimum range a month later, and then another nerf a month later at minimum range as well. So they really tried to tone her down, but it really didn't do anything because even after all of these nerfs combined after 3 months, she was still like an A tier brawler, low A tier, high B tier brawler in the meta. And then of course a month later in June, a hypercharge was added, making her a top A tier meta in the brawler because the hypercharge was just really good, allowed her to defend herself better, make more plays. And also she then received a nerf not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, with her gadget, and she's still at an A tier, B tier brawler. So simply she just does so much damage, making her so good at long range maps. Her hypercharge is great for offensive plays, open up the map, ultimate sniper, 2 good gadgets, and she was a top 10 pick and banned for BSC. So much to like about Piper. So before we take a look at the 14th best brawler for 2024, let's take a look at some honorable mentions. So starting off with Lily. So Lily was really good when she got reworked to have 2 pieces of ammo. She shredded through everything, so she completely broke the meta, and she had to be emergency nerfed 1 week later. That was around the same time that Frank got reworked, but we'll touch on that later on. Max also an honorable mention because Max was a top 3 pick and bans in BSC for the year. Max was always like A tier, never really broken, but such a good pick and competitive, so gotta always mention Max. The same goes for Gene as well. He was a top 5 pick in BSC. Same goes for Byron as well. He was super consistent. He wasn't good at the beginning of the year, but then he got some buffs with damage, supercharge rate, which made him meta again, and he's still really good now. And then Amber again, a really consistent brawler. So like 4 of those 5 brawlers were just really consistent throughout the year. And let's take a look at number 14, which is Juju. So Juju is one of the newest released brawlers in the game right now. She was released at the end of October, and she's always been slept on. I think as a casual, I would say that a lot of people underrated her because literally she's been S tier since she's been introduced, and she's not received any nerfs yet, probably because at the casual kind of play range, she probably hasn't got crazy win rates or usage rates. I don't even know, because right now in ranked and competitive, she's easily the best brawler in the game. So Juju, I had to include her for that reason. She's only been in the game for like 2 months, but she's just been so dominant. She's so versatile. She's got broken gadgets. She's got just everything about her. Her super can just be really annoying because it has a lot of HP. She has crazy range longer than Piper. Yeah, she's just crazy strong right now. Next, on number 13, we have Charlie. So Charlie was so broken at the first half of this year. The second half, not so much, but let's dive into it. So Charlie was a consistent pick in the meta and the most used brawler in competitive all the way up until June, where she received her nerfs, which we'll dive into. So she was actually released late into October 2023, and she was always S tier there, like the best brawler in the game. She was actually nerfed 7 times before 2024, and she was still S tier, so crazy. She received 4 more nerfs at the end of February, but she was still she was just S tier. They didn't do enough nerfs, but then they did nerf her 2 months later. They nerfed her 3 times, and that still wasn't enough. They tried nerfing her range, they tried nerfing all sorts of things with supercharge rate in the past as well, and it still wasn't enough. She was still S tier, still used so much in competitive. And then finally in June, at the end of June, she was nerfed 3 more times, and she just slowly went down the meta all the way down into the C/D tier where she's at now. So she's even received a couple of buffs towards the end of the year, but that's just not been enough for her. But just because of how dominant she was in the first 6 months, she absolutely was one of the best brawlers in 2024. So next, at number 12, we have Serge. So Serge actually started the year in the D tier. However, back-to-back health buffs slowly got him into the meta. The health buff, the first one was actually in December 2023, and then he received another one at the start of January, and then he just slowly went up the meta. He went from like the C tier, B tier, A tier, and that's mainly because the meta just really favored him. The map pool switched up a lot because before it was super open, and then a bunch of bushy maps opened up, so of course that allowed him to thrive a lot more. And yeah, the meta just favored him a lot more all the way up until he received a hypercharge at the end of August, and that just took him to the S tier for months, because even though the hypercharge wasn't broken, it was just Serge as a whole was just so dominant in 1v1s, just so good at shutting down tanks, which of course with more hypercharges, the more you needed a tank counter. Serge was always that guy. He also received a hypercharge nerf in the middle of November, which still made him like an S tier brawler, and then they nerfed his HP a couple of weeks ago, and he's still like an A/S tier brawler today. So he was also in the top 20 picks for competitive. So Serge absolutely has been dominating in 2024 and has to be on the list. So now moving on to number 11, we have Frank. So as everybody knows, Frank was one of the worst brawlers in the game all the way up until his rework, which was at the end of June. So if you guys know, the rework completely broke him. Him and Lily got reworks at the same time, and the meta was just one of the worst the whole year. He was so broken. He could unwind his attack so quickly. Basically what they did is that his main attack delay was now decreased whenever his health got lower. So below the HP, the faster he could just wreck everybody. So basically by the time you blink, you were dead. If Frank was low in HP, it was busted. They emergency nerfed him at the beginning of July, which still made him S tier. They then nerfed him 3 more times a month later, still S tier. They then nerfed him a couple of months later as well in November, 3 times, and he's still A tier. They nerfed him a couple of weeks ago, and he's still A tier. So the whole rework has just made Frank really busted, as he still boasts the most HP in the game, and his hypercharge rate is super fast. He's able to dominate so easily. Even against tank counters, Frank can really do a lot because of how quickly he can unwind when he's about to die. So yeah, Frank busted. Now moving into the top 10 brawlers for 2024, starting off at number 10 with Meg. So Meg was pretty much an A tier brawler the entire year prior to her rework. So she got reworked at the end of June, just like Frank and Lily. She was already great in the meta because she had a lot of HP, she had a good range, she countered snipers and knockout and bounty. So competitively speaking, she was A tier. But because she was just played so little for the casuals, they reworked her and they just made her damage just absolutely disgusting. They made her damage dealing machine, which quickly made her broken. Again, if you rewind back to June, she just shredded through everything. Anything that got within her range, she deleted. She was so busted. They then took a couple of months to nerf her twice, but she was still like an AS tier brawler in the meta. She still just had so many good matchups. It then took a couple of months later, all the way in October, and she was nerfed twice, and that made her a lot more balanced, because right now she's like C or B tier in the meta. But yeah, just because of how dominant she's been in competitive the whole year, again, the rework broke her, as it always seems to do. She absolutely is one of the best brawlers this year. So now moving into the 9th best brawler for 2024, we have Gale. So Gale was actually pretty balanced for the first half of the year, but when his hypercharge got released at the end of June, it completely broke him, because the hypercharge was good, but there was also a bug as well. So if you guys don't know, there was a bug where with his super, it actually dealt double the damage, which was 2,200. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it really did make him good. He also had a hypercharge, which was pretty easy to charge considering he was a tank counter. His super was also 5 tiles wide. It just made it so easy to chain through his hypercharges. This was actually then nerfed, so it was 4 tiles instead of 5 a week later. But then he received 2 buffs. He received a super damage buff for whatever reason, and he received some other buffs as well. It was just ridiculous how strong he was in the meta. Also, the crazy thing about it was the fact that with a hypercharge super, he could easily chain through multiple, like 2-3 hypercharge supers in a row. And of course, you do the math right, that is probably like 8k damage. That could literally just kill tanks alone just from the super. He then received 2 buffs, and then they fixed the double damage bug at the end of August. He then received 3 more nerfs a month later, all the way in October, but he was still A and S tier in the meta. And then he finally received some nerfs in the middle of November, and that brought him to like balanced in the meta, CB tier. But yeah, Gale, who was in the top 15 in competitive, he was so annoying in the hypercharge meta, so I'm glad he's not meta anymore. So now moving into number 8, we have Kit. So Kit was actually released at the end of 2023, and he completely broke the game. So of course, a few days into 2023 and then a couple of weeks of 2024, especially in Showdown, Kit could infinitely jump in Showdown because his power scaled so fast. He'll charge his super instantly, so you can go from player to player. You guys probably seen this already. There's multiple videos on it if you want to check it out. And he only needed 2 hits to get his super. He had an invisible gadget which was 5 seconds long. He couldn't also receive damage whilst attached to someone, which is crazy to think about. Completely forgot about that, making him so broken. He also was broken with tanks, where essentially you could just jump on a tank and you would never die with the cheeseburger gadget. It was just impossible to counter. The only way to counter Kit in those 2 weeks was through Cordelius or Charlie, where you literally had to detach them with super. So he received 4 nerfs at the beginning of January, but that just put Kit into the B tier and then slowly started to fall down the meta. Then received 4 buffs in April and a nerf, which saw him shoot up to the B/A tier, where he's pretty much stayed until today. Kit has pretty much been A tier in the meta in so many different ways, in so many different metas all year. Kit has been so annoying. So now moving on to number 7, we have Clancy. So Clancy was broken upon release. I underrated him a little bit, but since he's received 12 nerfs and he's only balanced right now, but as I said, since release he's been broken. He countered absolutely everything. At level 3, his super damage absolutely insane. His super recharge rate, so whenever he used his super, he would get hit back instantly. His level 3 speed boost, everything was just crazy. After every kill, he would always have another super available, making it impossible for you to even approach him, especially as a tank. And once he got level 3, everybody knew he was the best brawler in the game. The speed boost was just crazy. So he received 5 nerfs at the end of August, and at first it felt like the nerfs did something, but he climbed his way back into the S tier immediately. He then received 6 nerfs in the middle of November, and that didn't do much to him as well, because he was still S tier. He was still used all the time in World Finals. And then finally he received a nerf to his level 3 speed in December, and that finally put him down to the B/C tier. But he's still a great tank counter right now. Clancy has been S tier pretty much since his release. Tanks just absolutely hate facing off against him. His super damage has been busted still right now. Yeah, Clancy has just been broken. So now moving into number 6, we have Melody. So Melody was released at the end of March, and she was completely broken upon release. So another brawler where the majority of players underestimated her because it took a little bit of skill or getting used to the new mechanics, of course, to having 3 supers once you built up 1. Insane 3 dashes. But the great thing about her was her shield gadget. It gave her 45% shield damage reduction with 3 notes, and that made her near enough 10k HP with super every single time. And then on top of that, the star power gave her a 24% movement speed. So of course she was super tanky, super fast, good damage, so much to like about her. And the meta and the map pool just favored her so much, and there weren't many big damage dealers out there that countered her, so she was at the top of the meta for a long time. She received some nerfs like a month later, but she was still A and S tier, A/S tier in the meta. She then received a HP nerf in June, which definitely turned her down, moved her down to like the B tier, low A tier. That definitely was the biggest nerf to her, but she was still good in competitive meta and improved as the months went on, but required a bit more skill. But particularly in heist, she was of course really broken, getting those notes on the save. And then she received a hypercharge a couple of weeks ago, and then they've received a nerf just because the hypercharge is so good fundamentally, but hypercharge has easily made her like at the cusp of S tier because of how broken it is. It gives her such a crazy movement speed buff, a crazy shield again. So Melody's just been breaking this meta in 2024. So next up at number 5, we have Kenji. So Kenji was released at the end of September, so he's only had a couple of months in 2024 to shine, but he was broken upon release. So he had a star power that blocked 90% of incoming damage every 5 seconds, broken. His healing gadget was healing him 75% of the damage taken, of course broken. He has very fast reload speed, so good DPS, good mobility. He has a healing trait, so making his 1v1 interactions just crazy strong. His supercharge rate was fast, his super was easy to hit. You could heal from your super, your main attack, your gadget. There's just so many ways to heal, just making him completely busted. So he received a nerf like a couple of weeks later, nerfing his healing gadget, but he was still the second best brawler in the game. Only Mo was better. And then he received 2 more nerfs a month later, but that actually made him the best brawler in the game because other brawlers around him received nerfs, and he was still just insanely good because the nerfs really didn't do anything to him until the nerf that he received a couple of weeks ago where they nerfed his reload speed. But still, I'd say he's like an 8-tier brawler in the game, just not as broken. So he's had an incredibly high ban rate in BSC. You saw how much he was played in competitive. Just so much to like about Kenji. I just couldn't put him in here because he's just been broken upon release. So now moving into the 4th best brawler for 2024, we have Mo. So Mo was released at the end of August and was actually nerfed before his release. Believe it or not, he dealt like 6,000 damage with his super, which was completely broken, but he was just broken on release anyways and wasn't nerfed properly for over a month. He dealt 1,200 damage with his main attack, which was really good for wall peeking. It was basically the better version of Spike. He had a fast unload speed, reload speed, which meant his DPS was crazy. He charged super fast, which allowed him to kill anyone in a 1v1 just stupidly fast. He kept his ammo after reverting back from his super form, so he always had some ammo available. He basically had no weaknesses. So he actually received a nerf not too long after his release, but it literally did nothing to him. He was still the best brawler in the game. He then received 3 more nerfs not long after, like a month later, and it still wasn't enough. He was still the best brawler, S tier in the meta. He then received some nerfs in November, 2 nerfs, and it still wasn't enough. He was the top 3 brawler in the game. And then he received some nerfs a couple of weeks ago, which finally did something to him, but he's still like a B tier brawler in the meta. So he's received 9 nerfs in total. He's had a crazy high ban rate in BSC and a top 5 win rate as well. So he's only been introduced in the game for like 3 or 4 months as well as Kenji, but he completely broke the game. Now moving into the 3rd best brawler of 2024, we have Buzz Lightyear. So believe it or not, Buzz was only released like 3-4 weeks ago. But because of how strong he's been since release, I've just got to put him in the top 3. So he, of course, completely broke ladder. Luckily, I was actually on vacation, so I didn't get to witness the absolute peak of this. But everybody was playing Buzz Lightyear. It's the fact as well, you could play 3 Buzz Lightyears in the same team before you'd even got into the game. Was just crazy. So of course he has 3 different modes which were all really good in unique ways, but the most broken mode was definitely Saber mode. 9,000 HP. He charged his super with only 4 shots, and his super had a long range. It had knockback, fast unload speed, great damage. He had the tank trait. So many broken things about him. His laser mode dealt 2,300 damage and put people on fire for 4 seconds, insane range. There's just so many good things about him. But of course, because he's a limited brawler and he's a collab brawler, Brawl Stars evidently wanted him to be strong on release. But he received 4 nerfs a week from his release, and he's still the best brawler in the game right now. So fortunately, he's not in ranked, but if he was in ranked, he'd probably be the best brawler in the game still. The 2nd best brawler of 2024, I went with Angelo. So even though Angelo's prime probably wasn't as better as other brawlers like Buzz, Mo, Kenji, even Lily, Frank, etc. But because of how consistent Angelo's been throughout the year, you've got to put him in the top 2. Just because on release, Angelo dealt 4,400 damage, and with poison, dealt 8,800 damage, which was insane. Angelo only took 2 shots to charge super, and he could infinitely stay alive with the star power, and the poison damage charged the super as well. So he always had super available, and he completely took over Eve's role in the meta. So the first nerf was in the end of April, but that still made him an 8-tier brawler in the meta. Didn't really do anything. The same went for the June nerf. 2 nerfs, still an 8-tier brawler. July received a hypercharge buff because of course you can't let Angelo not be meta, right? But he was the most picked and banned brawler for the whole of BSC, but more specifically the most banned brawler, showing just how strong he's been all year. So every single tier list, he's been 8 and above. You've got to give it to Angelo. He's just completely dominated this year's meta. So now moving into the strongest brawler of 2024, I think it's quite clearly the twins. Larry and Laurie have completely broken the game since their release. They were released at the beginning of the year, at the end of January, and it took 2 whole weeks for Brawl Stars to nerf them. even though they're probably the most broken brawler of all time when you take a look at it. I think only Prime Rosa comes close. They were an epic brawler, and matchmaking was completely screwed. There was duplicate Larrys every single game for 2 weeks straight. You're thinking about these twins, which were literally immortal. It was the most frustrating time in Brawl Stars history. The whole community was raging. I don't know why it took them 2 weeks. It was just dumb. They had 0 counters, literally 0. Not even Edgar, not even Mortis could kill these twins. So what countered them? As throwers, you know, Edgar, Mortis is supposed to counter them. They definitely didn't counter Prime Larry and Laurie. Their Protect star power meant that you deflected all of your damage to the twin. You also had the fact that it took 5 shots to charge up your super, so you always had another super available. You had a 33% healing gadget. The shots would come out instantly, dealing 1,680 damage. The assist star power meant that when you hit the safe with the twin, you would get your ammo back instantly, so you had infinite ammo. So many broken things about him. So he received 5 nerfs at the beginning of February. It literally did nothing, still A/S tier. The same a month later, 2 more nerfs, but still A/S tier. The same a month later, 4 more nerfs, still A/S tier. It was one of the most picked and banned brawlers in competitive, and the next nerf he received like a month ago, still he was A/S tier after that. So he's received 12 nerfs all year, and he's still A tier in the meta. I just don't know what else they can do to the twins, because they're still just so consistent all year long. Absolutely the best brawler of the year for me. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comment section below what you would change, and I'll see you guys next time.